please don't buy your building. Please just don't buy your building. For the love of Pete, don't buy your building. Well, maybe buy your building. Let's talk about it. Over the past 16 years, I've stepped foot through the door of almost 1,000 dental practices and helped design and build more than 100 of them. And these are the things I've learned along the way. My name is Rick, and welcome to The Dental Evangelist. Welcome to this episode of The Dental Evangelist, where we're spreading the good news of dentistry. Today we're going to talk about whether you should buy your current building or not. About a month ago, I met with a doctor at his new practice. He was the new owner of the business, and he'd also bought the building along with it. And he wanted to make some changes, so we were going over where he could put his delivery unit, how he could change the rear cabinet, and I watched this realization wash over his face that this building that he just spent a lot of money on, along with his practice, is not going to fit his needs in the future. So it really became a conversation of almost triage. Well, I can't do what I want, but can you help me figure out a little bit better way of what I'm doing? So that's what I want to talk about today, is I want to talk to you about should you buy your current building? Because the chances are there's a lot of shortcomings here and you may not be thinking about how they're going to affect you in the future, and it's a massive investment. So we really need to talk through, should you buy your current building, or maybe is it time to move? The first thing you want to do before you decide to buy your building is really sit down and think about what are your goals for the long-term future. Because once you buy this thing, you're going to be married to it for a long time. I would say a minimum of 10 years to make it a good investment. So you need to think about, where am I going? What kind of practice do I want? And I would include your spouse in this conversation, because he or she, whether they work in the practice or not, is going to be a big part of that decision, because your work goals should be tied to your personal goals. What are they? What do you want to be doing in the future? What's your timeline? And those are all things you need to talk about when you're making the building purchase decision. I chatted with a doctor about maybe a month ago, and he was an excited new doctor who had just bought the practice. He didn't buy the building, thank goodness, but he was doing some remodels and different things in there. And I asked him, what is your main goal for your first year here? And he said, well, I want to paint the place. I said, okay, that's great. I guess that's sort of a goal. That is something you'd accomplish. I'd say it's more of a task. And then I said, well, what else? Well, I want to change the carpet and the flooring. Okay, well, why do you want to do that? And he said, well, I want to make a better patient experience. And it led me to, again, well, why? He said, well, because I want to attract more patients. That's the goal. He wanted to attract more patients, and these were some of the first steps he was going to take to do it. So when you're thinking through your goals, you have to think of, do I want to end up with a 10 operatory practice? Do I want to end up with a 20 operatory practice? Do I want to end up with a small practice that does a lot of all-on-X, or a boutique practice? Your practice, your building, and your goals all need to fit your lifestyle. So that's the first thing you're going to want to figure out, is do a little dream session, again, with your spouse, including them, and decide, where do I want to go? And then you can ask, well, does this building fit where I want to go? Unfortunately, oftentimes that answer is no. First questions I would ask when I'm thinking about the vision is, do I want to have an associate within the next 10 years? And then the second part of that, part B, would be, do I want to work at the same time as the associate? And the reason I ask that is because a one doctor practice really only needs maybe 5 to 6 ops. I would say 2 ops that the doctor can work out of, 1 overflow for emergencies and things, so you don't have to turn those people away. And that would typically support 2 hygienists in a pretty traditional practice. But if you're going to want to have an associate and then work same business hours that they are, you're going to need more like 9 or 10 operatories. You might be able to do 9 and each share an overflow operatory, but you're each going to probably still have about 2 hygienists, so that's a minimum of 9 operatories. That's a big practice. So if you're sitting in your 5 or 6 operatory practice right now and you go, I want to hire an associate one day, that may not be the building for you unless you aren't going to practice during the time that they're practicing. But that can even lead into other things like, will my team work 5 days a week? Do I need to hire a whole extra set of staff members just to come in and work with the other doctor? So these are all things you're going to want to be asking yourself before you decide to purchase basically one of the biggest assets that you'll probably ever buy. One of the next questions you're going to want to ask yourself when you're considering whether you should buy your current building or not is, what kind of procedures do I want to be doing in the future, and will this space allow me to add those? So recently I put in a CBCT into a new owner's office, and I literally put it into his office. It wasn't in his practice, it was in his office. He had to give up the privacy of his office just to add this piece of technology, but he had the skills to start doing implants and endo and really add a lot of production to this practice that he'd purchased. And so it was worth that doing, and luckily he was able to add the power and the things that we needed to do it, but he made the sacrifice of he's losing his office. He's already realizing that this place with 4 operatories is maybe a little bit small for him, and talking about giving up his office completely and turning it into an operatory. Some other things to think about are, what about the procedures I want to do? Do I want to add implants down the road? So if I don't have a PAN or a CBCT, I'm going to need space for one, like in that last example. But some of the other things that you might need to think about is, do I need a bigger operatory? Am I going to be doing surgeries? Do I want to have a big oral surgery table that comes over the top of the patient if I'm going to really go deep and do some all-on-X cases like I see quite a few people doing now? Do you have the space for that? Will the equipment allow it? A lot of the practices I find that are built before 2000 have really small operatories. If I walk into a practice that's that old or older, I can almost guess without taking my tape measure out how deep the operatories are. They're probably about 10 feet deep, maybe 10 foot 4 or 5, but they most likely have a 12 o'clock wall that's not very big with maybe a rear delivery or a cart on it. And then they probably have 2 big side cabinets with a sink each that are full of rotting old supplies, things that aren't used. But the point being is they're hard to use, because when we design operatories now, we design them to be 11.5 to 12 feet deep, and we really rely heavily on a 12 o'clock cabinet for the efficiency, the workflow, for adding some of these items that you might need, like you have a place for your implant motors, for your apex locators, your endo handpieces, and all these things to work efficiently, so your assistant's not running in and out of the operatory all the time. So if your building's not set up that way now, it's going to be very hard for us to add something when you realize, man, my assistant can't stay in his or her seat. They're running back to sterilization all the time to grab things. I don't have what I need. I'm not turning over my rooms efficiently. Or I want to add this procedure, but I don't have the space to do it. What if you want to add sedation or something like that? That's a whole new animal. So some of these things that you need to think about, is my building going to limit what I can do? Because a lot of these procedures that you're going to add are going to be really high production procedures that can really change the future of your practice. The next thing you're going to want to ask yourself is, will this building allow me to work ergonomically? If this is your first building that you're buying and maybe you're on the younger side or mid-40s or lower, you may not be feeling the aches and pains that come with years and years of dentistry yet. I see that pretty often with younger doctors, is they'll work with the chicken wings out and bent over, and I tell them, go to CDA, go to one of these big national conventions, Greater New York, and watch the old timers walk around the show like this. They're like that because they've bent over that way their whole career, and that's not the way you need to practice, but it might be something that your building is forcing you to do. So I'll come in occasionally and a doctor will say, hey, I don't like this rear delivery. It doesn't work for me. I don't like making these big movements to grab my handpiece every time I want to add it to the chair, which is a great idea. That's the ergonomically best way to deliver your handpiece is off the chair. So I'll go in and I'll take a look, but we need to have air at the toe of the chair to make something like that happen. And most buildings that we work in are on a concrete slab. We have no way to get the air down underneath the chair if it's not there already. And I would say more often than not, I find that it's not there. So now we start asking ourselves, well, what can we do to make it better? But everything is a half measure. It's still expensive. You still have to buy the new expensive equipment from me, or we have to modify the building, which can be costly, disruptive, and really cause some problems. You might even need to get a permit to cut the concrete, move the air underground, just because you want to try to get a delivery unit on your chair. But these are things you need to think about even when you're young and you feel really good. Is people don't think about it, but over time, dentistry is going to beat you up if you're not careful. So far you might be saying, okay, Rick, my building's looking good so far. I like how my equipment is configured. My rooms are big enough. I have enough room for growth to do the things I want. I can do the procedures I want even. So I think I'm going to buy my building. I just want to give it a facelift, or I want to make some small changes. That's great. You might be in a good building for something like that. But let's talk about that real quick. Facelifts are usually pretty easy. I actually recommend painting your practice basically every 5 years to make it look like it's always fresh and always new. It's a way to communicate with patients and show them that you care, because they don't understand what you're doing in their mouth, but they understand when everything looks fresh and clean and how they're treated. Is the bathroom clean? Things like that. So every 5 years, I would recommend painting your building. And every 10 years, I'd consider doing new flooring. So people will walk in and go, this guy's constantly remodeling. This place is beautiful, it's fresh, and that's wonderful for the patient perspective. And those are things that are minimally invasive, that aren't not horribly expensive depending on where you are, but they also won't impact your workflow too much. So if you're thinking about doing one of these small remodels, some of the things that you want to explore now before you buy your building is, what kind of impact is this going to make? How long am I going to have to be shut down? Something as simple as adding outlets or moving plumbing or a wall technically may require a permit. And if you're going to submit for permits, it may even open you up to needing to make changes for ADA, so Americans with Disabilities Act. There's door clearances, bathroom clearances, sink clearances, all these things that, depending on how much you spend in most jurisdictions, they can maybe make your building come up to a full ADA standard. I've even seen one where a doctor had built his new practice less than 10 years ago. The bathroom, everything was ADA, it was beautiful. When we did his expansion into the other half that wasn't built yet, they made him move his toilet by 1 inch because the ADA standard had changed in that amount of time. So the amount of cost to move that one toilet 1 inch to cut up the concrete, move the drain, is kind of silly. But these are some of the things you need to think about, because remodels are not necessarily cheaper than building a new practice. Depends on what you're doing. So if you're going to do a remodel, I say keep it fairly light, explore it before you buy the building, and make sure that it's not too disruptive. But these are some of those things that you need to think about, because the ADA stuff will especially come up to bite you. I'd say the last thing to think about is you want to make sure that this building is going to fit your needs for at least the next 10 years. Commercial real estate can be a wonderful investment and a blessing to you and your family, but it can be a curse if you end up trapped in it. Even if your building is wonderful now, but it's not going to fit you in the future and you might move in 5 years, this probably isn't the building for you. Commercial real estate is not liquid enough for you to just sell and get out and be able to invest in the place that you want to be in. You have to think about the fact that this building might take you close to 2 years to sell, and the person who's buying it most likely probably won't be a dentist. It'll probably be someone else who wants it for other purposes and guts it. I think a lot of dentists think, oh, I've got this dental practice and other dentists will move in. And that does happen sometimes. We call those second generation spaces. But a lot of dentists won't want to move into the space for the exact same reasons that you want to move out of it. Those limitations are something that they're going to notice too. My final recommendation is going to be that before you buy this building, you ask someone like me to come out and take a look at it. So I'm an equipment specialist for one of the major distributors in the country. I would say talk to your rep or whoever your point of contact is with the person that you're working with your major distributor, and ask them to have their equipment specialist come out and take a look at it. I'd get my goals together first, so when they're there, you can talk them through what you want to do in the future. But the reality of it is we look at this with very different eyes than you do, because this is kind of all we do. We're building new practices. We're talking about the inches from the headrest to the face of the cabinet, and we're walking construction jobs all the time. So we know how all of these things affect each other. So we're really the best people, better than architect or even maybe a contractor. Might be worth bringing the contractor too to make sure there's no structural problems or issues there. But really the best people to look at this, because we understand dentistry and then we also understand construction. So when you tell us your goals, we can tell you, yes, this building will work for that, or no, it won't. So again, I would contact your local rep, whoever you already have a relationship with. This is not an income producing thing for any of them. This is just a service because you're a good customer to them. So ask them to come out and do that for you. It will be invaluable in making your decision. All right, if you've gotten this far and you say, Rick, I think I'm good. This place is going to allow me to grow to the size I want to grow and add my associate. It's gonna allow me to add the procedures I want to, the CBCT, all the equipment and different things. I'm gonna be able to have a good workflow and work through those things. And I'm gonna be able to work ergonomically. I'm gonna be able to do the small remodel or facelift that I'm ready to do without making these major disruptive changes. Well, in that case, your building might be an incredible blessing and a wonderful investment. And that's the time where maybe now that we've done the due diligence, it's time to make that offer. Well, I hope this video helped you in your decision to buy your building or not, because it's a really sad part of my job when I walk in and have to deliver the bad news, or I'm showing a doctor why they can't do something and their building's the problem, and they realized, wow, I bought this not very long ago. I spent a lot of money on it and I'm trapped. I don't want that to happen to you. I know you don't want that to happen to you. So I hope this helped you. I hope you'll come back and explore some of the other videos that we're putting on this channel, and that you might like and subscribe it. And remember, life is about serving each other, or at least it should be.